37-year-old Senovia Medina dropped off groceries to her mother in southwest Houston on the morning of January 5th, 2006, and then seemingly vanished into thin air. Her car was found behind a gas station miles from her home, with its license plates missing and no sign of Senovia in sight. Her boyfriend at the time, Miguel Martinez, is currently serving a 20-year sentence for her murder. But this story is full of questions and contradictions, and as of this recording, Zenovia's remains have never been found. Hello, and welcome to Box in the Basement podcast. I'm your host, Arlene.
And I'm Leah.
In the last 50 years, the U.S. has had nearly 1 million homicides, and since then, over 250,000 cases sit in a box in a basement where all hopes for justice go to die. In 1996, someone shot my uncle Leon Laurelis, changing my life forever and leaving a devastating hole in my heart, and his case remains unsolved. Join me and my wife, Leah, as we shed light on these forgotten victims, their life, the loved ones they left behind, the evidence, and the theories of who committed these crimes, leaving communities in fear and leaving families without answers. Support our effort to change the justice system through the Homicide Families Victims' Rights Act, as we hope to make a difference with our audience as we remember the victims and demand justice. In 1996, my world was shattered when my uncle Leon Laurelis was shot execution style in a small town in Texas. To this day, his murder remains unsolved, and the pain of that injustice continues to haunt me, my family, and Leon's friends and coworkers. Here at Box in the Basement, we want to shed light on the overwhelming number of unsolved murders and disappearances here in Texas and beyond. We want to bring awareness to the lesser-known cases that got little to no attention, in hopes that someone listening will come forward with any information, because we strongly believe all lives matter. Ultimately, we want to get justice for Leon and for all the victims whose cases are sitting, collecting dust in a box in a basement. Please note that this episode contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Please like and follow our pages on all social media platforms for Box in the Basement Podcast and Justice for Leon Laurelis. And now you can also find us on YouTube.
News in 2006 was dominated by the Lebanon War, an armed conflict between Hezbollah and Israel, the execution of Saddam Hussein, the Sago mine disaster in West Virginia, and the demotion of Pluto to dwarf planet status. Italy won the World Cup and hosted the Winter Olympics in Torino. Twitter was launched, and the world is a worse place because of it. And Nintendo released the Wii. The week of January 5th, Beyoncé dominated the Billboard Hot 100 with Check on It, and Billy Currington was at the top of the country charts with Must Be Doing Something Right. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was number one at the box office, and James Patterson held the number one spot on the New York Times bestseller list with Mary Mary. We've talked about Houston before, but we'll give you the rundown here. Houston actually saw an uptick in violent crime in 2006, particularly in homicides. Over the course of the year, homicides would go up 13.5% from 2005. There are a number of factors that led to this. Houston gained almost 150,000 residents as people fled areas ravaged by Hurricanes Katrina and Rita in 2005. Houston had also begun clearing up and clearing out rundown areas of town, particularly the 3rd Ward, to accommodate office space and new apartments. Gentrification also displaces people and exacerbates income disparity and problems with affordable housing. Houston's economy was dominated by the energy sector, which is not surprising, and gas and oil prices were high in 2006, which was good for business and good for employees in that industry. In 2006, Houston had a population of around 2 million people, and that's just in the city itself. The whole Houston metro area had around 5.2 million people. In comparison, Houston has a population around 2.4 million people today, with well over 6 million in the metro area.
We don't have a whole lot of information on Senovia's early life, and there's a good reason for that. She was born on a family farm in El Salvador in the late 1960s. Now, Leah would probably give a 90-minute history lesson on the region if she could, so I'll summarize. El Salvador is a small country in Central America on the Pacific coast. Decades of political instability led to grinding poverty, popular uprisings from both political extremes, and an uptick in organized crime. A brutal 12-year civil war in El Salvador began in 1979 that resulted in over 500,000 people fleeing the country. Senovia was one of those people. She left El Salvador alone at age 20 and made her way north through Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico, before eventually settling in Houston, joining other family members who had also fled the violence. She secured a job as a housekeeper and worked diligently to make a life for herself. She eventually met a man named Miguel Martinez, and the pair moved in together, sharing a residence on La Mora Drive in southwest Houston. The two didn't have the greatest relationship, and on the day she went missing, Senovia stopped by a realtor's office. According to the realtor, Senovia was 3 months pregnant and interested in finding a new home. She was planning to leave Miguel and raise the baby on her own. It's unclear whether or not Miguel knew at the time she was planning to leave, but the timing of her disappearance suggests he did. But we'll discuss that later on in more detail. Senovia was close with her family, and she helped out her mother from time to time. On the morning of Thursday, January 5th, 2006, Senovia went grocery shopping for her mother. When she dropped off the groceries, she told her mother she was going to run some errands the rest of the morning and left. And that was the last time anyone saw her alive.
Because Senovia was very close to her family, it only took a matter of hours for them to become concerned when she didn't return home and didn't answer any phone calls. Her family filed a missing persons report almost immediately, and the search began for Senovia. A few days after she was last seen alive, Senovia's boyfriend Miguel claimed he randomly came across her white 1995 Isuzu Rodeo abandoned behind a gas station near Memorial Drive and the 610 West Loop. That is nowhere near her residence on La Mora, and not in an area Senovia frequented. It's probably a 30-minute drive from home on a good day. Closer to an hour if the traffic is trafficking. If you've never been to Houston, Houston traffic is terrible. There was no sign of Senovia in or around her vehicle, and the license plates had been removed. This struck investigators as odd, since this would have been completely out of the way for Senovia or Miguel, and it put him on the radar early on. But police never had anything to tie her disappearance directly to him. The car didn't turn up any good clues, and Senovia's remains have never been found. Miguel failed 2 polygraph exams early in the investigation, and he boxed up Senovia's belongings just a few days after her disappearance. But as we know, that's not really enough to make an arrest on its own. Investigators kept their eye on Miguel for the next few years, hoping he would either confess or slip up.
And slip up he did. A confidential informant contacted the Houston police in April of 2011, stating they had information about the whereabouts of Senovia's remains. The informant claimed that this information came directly from Miguel, who allegedly admitted he was responsible for her disappearance. The police arranged a meeting between the informant and Miguel and had the informant wear a wire. In this meeting, which took place at Miguel's home, Miguel confessed that he killed Senovia. He was arrested on an illegal weapons charge. Police had found homemade silencers on his property, and the investigation went into high gear. Investigators found a magazine from 2002 with an article in it called Murder in 6 Easy Steps among Miguel's belongings. Not definite by any means, but it does raise questions. Shortly thereafter, Miguel was charged with Senovia's murder and interrogated by police. He confessed to killing Senovia during a heated argument at the couple's home. Miguel claimed that Senovia was in the shower and the couple were arguing over infidelity issues. And when Senovia stepped out of the shower, Miguel hit her, claiming she was trying to attack him with a letter opener. She stumbled, hit her head on the shower, and then died. Miguel claimed that it was an accident. He didn't mean to kill her, and he even claimed to have attempted CPR. He said that after he realized Senovia was dead, he panicked, wrapped her up in trash bags, and hid her body in a culvert in Waller County, Texas, which is just to the northwest of Houston. He also said he returned later to dump the body in a wooded gully nearby. Now, to me, that all sounds very plausible, because I also shower with my letter opener.
So, open and shut, right? Houston police got their man, right? Well, maybe. Law enforcement and EquiSearch launched a sizable search of the area Miguel claimed to have discarded Senovia's remains, but no trace of her was ever found. Searchers went on foot and ATV, they used dogs, they used drones, they used ground-penetrating radar, they dug numerous holes in the gullies near the culvert, and nothing. All they found was a few animal bones, some rocks, and some tree roots. Despite the lack of a body and circumstantial evidence being a bit loose, the DA wanted to push ahead with the case. Sensing the precarious position he was in, Miguel pled guilty to Senovia's murder. After all, he'd confessed twice, and he was facing life in prison if the case went to trial. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
And that's still not the end of the story. Miguel started to have second thoughts as the wheels of justice turned. Before sentencing, his legal team tried to get his confession suppressed, claiming it was coerced, but this was denied. He also tried to withdraw his guilty plea, but it was too late, and Miguel was sent to prison. So the question remains, did Houston police get the right person?
So there are three obvious possible scenarios here. First is the one that we always have to consider, which is, did Senovia leave on her own? She was a 37-year-old woman after all, and she was planning to leave Miguel anyway, and she was no stranger to uprooting her life and leaving. She'd done so 17 years prior when leaving El Salvador. I don't think this is the case, however. She was happy in Houston, albeit just not happy in her current relationship with Miguel. But did she leave on her own? I seriously doubt it. She was excited about being a mother and was ready and willing to move on with her life without Miguel. She was extremely close to her family, and for her to disappear without letting someone know would be out of character. There have been no reported sightings of Senovia in the last 19 plus years, and there's been no reported activity on her bank accounts or any other traceable items.
I agree, she didn't leave on her own. The other possibility is that someone other than Miguel is responsible for her disappearance. But like we've discussed in so many other cases, the probability of her having a violent partner who admitted to fighting with her the day she disappeared and also randomly coming into contact with a violent killer on the same day are astronomical. Not saying that's impossible, it just doesn't seem rational. So that leaves us with the most probable explanation, which is that investigators got the right guy. Senovia's family believes that Miguel was seeing at least one other woman behind her back, and Senovia's pregnancy became a burden he simply didn't want to deal with. Now, the circumstances of her murder are up for debate. Could she have died the way Miguel described? Absolutely. But Senovia's family tends to believe that Miguel shot her and then dumped her body, hence the multiple homemade silencers found in their home.
So then my question is, why didn't searchers find her remains? Miguel seemed pretty detailed with his movements.
He lied. Whether her death was accidental or intentional, Miguel obviously thought he could get away with it. Liars lie. That's what they do. I think he was just distracting investigators, wasting their time. Maybe trying to shore up some claim that his confession was coerced. Or maybe he's just messing with the family and wanting to control the narrative as long as possible. In any case, that's where we are with Senovia Medina. If you have any information on her whereabouts or what happened to her on that day in 2006, please contact the Houston Police Department at 713-731-5877.
San Antonio police are pretty sure they know what happened to 30-year-old Cecilia Huerta Gallegos, but as of the release of this episode, there has been no official resolution to her disappearance. She was last seen entering the bedroom she shared with her husband Reyes in July of 2019, and she was never seen or heard from again. God, 2019 seems so long ago. Is it just me? I know I've joked about it before, but we here call 2019 the last year of the before times. Anyway, 2019 saw the abdication of Japanese Emperor Akihito, the resignation of UK Prime Minister Theresa May, and the first impeachment of US President Donald Trump. China's space program landed a spacecraft on the dark side of the moon for the first time. Facebook paid a $5 billion fine for privacy violations, and voters around the world showed up in record breaking numbers that year. Lil Nas X sat atop the Billboard Hot 100 the week of July 8, 2019 with Old Town Road, and Blake Shelton and Morgan Wallen topped the country charts that week. Spider-Man Far From Home was number one at the box office, and Summer of '69 by Elin Hildebrand was at the top of the New York Times bestseller list. We've discussed San Antonio several times in previous episodes, but we'll cover some basic facts here. In 2019, San Antonio had a population of just over 1.5 million people, and it was the second fastest growing city in the entire US behind Phoenix, Arizona. Today, it's the seventh most populous city in the US, and it attracts some 39 million visitors a year to such attractions as the Riverwalk, Six Flags, the Alamo, Fiesta, Spanish Missions, and really good food. Plus, it's a good jumping off point to more rural locations in the hill country. On the darker side, more relevant to our story, San Antonio had one of the highest volumes of domestic violence related calls to emergency services in the state. The city struggles to keep up with the need for services related to domestic violence. Survivors face a lack of emergency shelter options and a lack of manpower in terms of social services and law enforcement with the relevant experience. And if we're being honest, there's still a huge stigma around reporting domestic violence in the state of Texas in general. If you talk to domestic violence survivors, you'll probably find at least a few who had people in their own families or circles blaming them for their abuse. It's your fault he beat you. What did you do to make him that upset? If you would just be submissive and listen to him, this wouldn't happen. Don't believe me? Go into the comment section of a story involving domestic violence. People say some crazy shit about victims. I'd like to think that we'd evolved past that kind of thing, but we really haven't as a society. Because this is an open and ongoing investigation, much of Cecilia's background and early life hasn't been made public by her family, which is understandable. We do know that Cecilia moved from Houston to San Antonio in 2012 with two children she had from a previous relationship. She worked at a convenience store at the time, which is where she met Reyes Gallegos. The couple had two more children, then Cecilia quit working to study for a career in healthcare, and the couple moved into their home on Southwick in the northwest section of town in 2014. Cecilia got her certified nursing assistant certification in late 2016 and went to work at St. Francis Nursing Home in Midtown San Antonio in mid 2017. Cecilia had been married to Reyes for about 5 years before she went missing, and she was in a relationship with him prior to that. Her family has said that she changed quite a bit during that time. She distanced herself from family and friends, which was made worse by the fact that she and Reyes lived in San Antonio, but the rest of her family stayed in Houston. And that's something that abusers do. They try to drive a wedge between you and your loved ones. When the couple were around family or friends, she was quiet, reserved, and acted almost scared, and that wasn't like her. Reyes wouldn't let her go anywhere on her own aside from work. He always had to be around her otherwise. On the rare occasion a friend or family member would get her alone, Cecilia would deny that anything concerning was going on. As time wore on, however, Cecilia did begin to open up to her friends and colleagues and then to her family. She disclosed to her sister Margie that she'd filed for divorce without Reyes knowing. The couple had been having problems for years, and Cecilia even revealed that Reyes was violent. She went on to tell Margie in a phone conversation right before she disappeared that if anything happened to her, look at her husband first. Things kind of came to a boiling point in the marriage in late June, just about 2 weeks before Cecilia disappeared. Reyes went to Cecilia's workplace and confronted one of her coworkers, hitting the man in the face before leaving. Cecilia had had enough by that point and tried to break up with Reyes that day. He responded by pulling a gun on her. Police received several more phone calls regarding domestic disturbances in the following 2 weeks. The last time Cecilia was seen in public was on July 7th as she left her job at St. Francis Nursing Home to check on her kids, who were at home with Reyes at the time. Reyes had once again showed up at Cecilia's workplace to confront her at around 6:40 p.m., prompting Cecilia to ask her manager if she could leave early to go stay with her kids. Her shift normally didn't end until 11 p.m. Cecilia had also talked to her brother on the phone earlier that day and told him that she had a bad feeling and wished she could just stay home with her children. Reyes had a number of security cameras set up inside and outside the family home in San Antonio, and they captured Cecilia returning home at around 7:30 p.m. on the 7th, and then they showed her entering the couple's bedroom. That's the last time she's seen on camera footage. Reyes called the police the next morning, July 8th, to report his wife missing. He claimed that they had just finished a fight about quote unquote infidelity issues. Cecilia had cut Reyes on his finger with a knife, and then she had fled the house on foot. Reyes claimed that Cecilia was having an affair and that she run off with another man who was waiting outside the house in his car the morning she supposedly went missing. So at first, this was treated as a missing persons case. But Cecilia's family doubted that early on. She hadn't tried to make contact with her family. She'd left her kids behind. She'd left her car behind. And she'd left all her personal effects in the house, including her phone. Law enforcement, family, friends, and volunteers organized searches in and around the Northwest Side neighborhood where Cecilia and her family lived. Searchers were on foot, horseback, and ATVs, and they used dogs and drones to try and find any traces of Cecilia, but to no avail. It should be noted that Reyes did not participate in any of these searches. This continued for several weeks as police and family members tried desperately to put together a timeline and find some inkling of where she may have gone. After weeks with no activity on Cecilia's credit cards or phone and no sign of her at work, investigators began to suspect that foul play was involved. Reyes' story fell apart pretty quickly as investigators reviewed the security camera footage from the home and began putting together a timeline. As we mentioned earlier, Cecilia can be seen entering the house at around 7:30 p.m. on July 7th, and then she is seen entering the main bedroom shortly thereafter. Reyes entered the bedroom at around 7:40 p.m. Cecilia is never seen on camera again, but Reyes is seen leaving the room at around 8:30 p.m. Investigators did see that Reyes deliberately prevented the children, all four of whom were in the house when Cecilia came home, from entering that bedroom for the rest of the evening. Reyes can be seen turning off the interior and exterior cameras just before 2 a.m., and then he turns them back on at around 3 a.m. He's seen leaving the house at around 5 a.m. and driving off in his truck. And then he returns at around 8 with shovels, a chainsaw, contractor grade trash bags, and cleaning supplies. He walks in and out of the main bedroom numerous times, and it appears that his t shirt is damp from sweat. At that point in time, and this is just a few weeks after Cecilia's disappearance, there isn't enough information to arrest Reyes Gallegos for a serious crime. While police were pretty certain by this time that Cecilia was dead and that Reyes was responsible, there was no real physical evidence that that was the case. Cecilia was missing, yes, but as we've discussed in many previous episodes, adults are allowed to go missing if they want to. Reyes claimed that Cecilia was cheating and had left on her own volition with another man. Because of the discrepancy in the timeline and the video surveillance, however, San Antonio PD was able to get Reyes Gallegos on filing a false police report. Remember, Reyes had called police the morning of July 8th, claiming that Cecilia had just left about 30 minutes prior to this call. Footage from the security cameras inside and outside the house determined that was a lie. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get the ball rolling in terms of a serious investigation into Reyes's activities on the evening of the 7th and the early morning hours of the 8th. Reyes was arrested in August of 2019 for making a false police report and then released on bail, though he was later rearrested after his bail amount was increased. At the end of August, a volunteer search and rescue organization called the Chainbreakers came to San Antonio to search Rodriguez Park on Leon Creek, which is just about a 10-minute drive from the Gallegos' home. The Chainbreakers were working on a tip passed from law enforcement. It seemed that Reyes was familiar with this particular park and this particular section of Leon Creek, and someone suggested there might be clues there. Searchers were unable to locate Cecilia's remains or any relevant evidence, however. And let's not forget that this man is known to be violent and confrontational. Things changed in 2021. Again, we want to reiterate that this is still considered unresolved, so we don't have access to every single detail. In August of 2021, investigators finally had enough to arrest and charge then 37-year-old Reyes Gallegos for Cecilia's murder. This is a big change because up until just days before his arrest, San Antonio PD still technically considered this a missing persons case. I was watching some videos and reading some interviews with police from the time of the arrest, and the cops were pretty cagey about answering questions about the status of Cecilia's remains. They essentially would not confirm or deny if her body had been found, and that's understandable given the circumstances. And to this day, I can't say for sure whether or not the police know something about her remains. I'm guessing we won't know for certain until the case finally goes to trial. Yes, it's 2025, and even though Reyes was arrested and charged in 2021, his trial still hasn't happened. It's been plagued by delays. In the meantime, Reyes's bond restrictions were also loosened by the court, so he's essentially out there living his life while Cecilia's family agonizes over where her remains are and what might come out of this trial. Thankfully, he doesn't have custody of any of the children, but he knows where Cecilia's family lives. Reyes has been behaving himself while he's out on bond, but like I said, he's known to be violent. The family is right to be worried, in my opinion. So that's where we are with Cecilia's case as of this recording. Reyes's original lawyer had some health issues that caused most of the delays, and his new legal team is playing catch-up. The DA's office told the media this past August that it's ready to proceed, but as of this recording, there's been no date set for the trial. We will keep you informed and updated as things progress.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcast creators, host, and guest. If you or someone you know is a victim of crime, support is available. Call 855-4-VICTIM to speak with someone who can help you understand your rights and options. Visit victimconnect.org to learn more. We are excited to announce that we are now a part of the Darkcast Network. Darkcast Network, the best in indie podcasts. Check out all the great shows at darkcastnetwork.com. If you think bringing unsolved cases is important, then please take a moment to rate and review our podcast. Also, please like and follow our pages on all social media platforms for Box in the Basement podcasts and Justice for Leon Laurelis. Please share this episode so we can bring awareness to these lesser-known cases so we can reach more people in hopes that someone who may know something will come forward. I'd also like to ask that you sign my petition for my Uncle Leon Laurelis' case to be reopened and reviewed with fresh eyes. And you can find our petition on change.org. Thank you for joining us. Be kind. Later, Gators.